Hey guys, so you're ready for it. Today's August 25th, 2022, 8:33 p.m. Central Time. The authority Biden is using for student loan handouts. So I decided to backtrack this. I'm going to show you the legislation, the backing that he's using for it, and everything else, and explain this. Because everyone's saying, and including myself, I was like, how is he able to do this? The House of Representatives is power of the purse. Congress should be the one doing this. Biden can't just move money around anytime he feels like it as president. So I decided to look into this. What he's using is very intriguing and extremely easy to bring a lawsuit against, 100%. So foresee that happening going into the courts and getting this overturned. I would not see how it wouldn't be. This is going to be a rule change that goes through the Federal Register, as all you guys are familiar with that if you're on my channel. I looked in the Federal Register. Department of Education is going to be who's going through it, and they have not posted it yet. It will be more likely than not, because it's supposed to be this way, but probably not. They may fast track it. A proposed rule, there should be a notice for people to write stuff, which they're going to ignore, between 30 to 90 days, depending on how they write it. And then they're going to make it a rule. They may fast track it. I don't know. I'll have to keep an eye on it. So anyway, in order for him to use the law to create the rule change, there has to be a national emergency going on. So I found this from the White House because I was like, is COVID-19 pandemic national emergency bullshit still in effect? Well, apparently it is. In fact, it is so in effect that there is absolutely no end date, okay? It says March 13th, 2020, on Proclamation 994, President declared a national emergency concerning the coronavirus 2019 pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic continues to cause significant risk to the public health and safety of the nation. For this reason, the national emergency declared on March 13, 2020 and beginning March 1st, 2020 must continue beyond March 1st, 2022, okay, because it was only lasting 2 years. Therefore, in accordance with Section 202D of the National Emergencies Act, 50 U.S.C. 1622D, I am continuing the national emergency declared in the Proclamation 9994 concerning COVID-19 pandemic. This notice shall be published in the Federal Register and transmitted to Congress. This was signed February 18, 2022 by Mr. Biden. So that's interesting because he left it open-ended. So that could actually have an effect on a lot of things, but beside the point. What he's using to justify this rule change being used by the Department of Education, which is going to be done by the Secretary of Education, okay? Follow me here. If you followed that, excellent. You've been on my channel for a long time. This is a law that was enacted in 2003. It had to do with the war in Iraq and Afghanistan and veterans now, which would be military then, serving, okay? This had everything to do with people leaving and going overseas serving. This had nothing to do with the general public, okay? Section 1, short title findings reference. This is not actually law, this portion, okay? This portion actually happens a lot in resolutions and laws and all that stuff. It says like findings and says Congress finds the following, blah, blah, blah. But it doesn't actually create law, but it creates the reason for the law. And so this is actually a great basis, okay, using this findings section to create a lawsuit. It says short title, it's actually known as Higher Education Relief Opportunities for Students Act of 2003. It's called the HEROES Act, in short, of 2003. Congress finds the following, okay? 1, there is no more important cause than that of our national defense. 2, United States will protect the freedom and secure and safety of its citizens. 3, United States military is the finest in the world and its personnel are determined to lead the world in pursuit of peace. 4, hundreds of thousands of Army, Air Force, Marine Corps, Navy, and Coast Guard reservists and members of the National Guard have been called to active duty or active service. 5, the men and women of the United States military put their lives on hold, leave their families, jobs, and post-secondary education in order to serve their country and do so with distinction. 6, There is no more important cause for this Congress than to support members of the United States military to provide assistance with their transition into and out of active duty and active service. Period. Those were the findings of Congress, basically stating this is why we created this law. Notice how it said nothing about civilians, people of the United States, American citizens, those types of things. Those words, if you will. It's specifically talking about active military. So here's what they're using. Besides that whole beginning, like I said, is a great basis for a lawsuit. This is the actual law that they're using. It says waiver authority for a response to military continuing and national emergencies. Excuse me. Waivers and modifications. Here it is. In general, notwithstanding any other provision of law, unless enacted with specific reference to this section, the Secretary of Education, referred to active secretary, may waive or modify any statutory or regulatory provisions applicable to student financial assistance programs under Title IV of the Act, which is this Act, as a secretary deems necessary in connection with a war or other military operations, or here it is, or national emergency, to provide waivers or modifications authorized by paragraph 2. So we're going to go on to paragraph 2 now. So notice there is something ugly in this act, though, too. It's not just talking about people. Like, for example, this is supposed to be military. So it's not just talking about individuals. You'll see what I'm talking about in a second. It says 2, actions authorized. The Secretary is authorized to waive or modify any provision described in paragraph 1 as may be necessary to ensure that, and it was referring to the paragraph I read, A, recipients of student financial assistance under Title IV of the Act who are affected, individuals are not placed in a worse position financially in relation to that financial assistance because of their status as affected individuals. There is a definition for affected individuals. We'll go into that in a second. Administrative requirements placed on affected individuals who are recipients of student financial assistance are minimized to the extent possible without impairing the integrity of the student financial assistance programs to ease the burden on such students and avoid inadvertent technical violations or defaults. Okay, moving on. The calculation, this is how he's doing the, once he extended the memorandum for pausing student loans till the end of December, right? Then everybody has to start paying their student loans starting January of 2023. This is a section that they're using to justify changing the amount of your loan that you're actually paying. So if you're paying $275 right now, for example, every month, right? That's not adjusted to your income. That is adjusted based on your loan. So how he's calculating it is using this section, changing the payment process, okay? C, the calculation of annual adjusted family income and, quote, available income as used in determination of need for student financial assistance under Title IV of the Act for any such affected individual and determination of such need for his or her spouse and dependents, if applicable, may be modified to means the sums received in the first calendar year of the award year for which such determination is made, in order to reflect more accurately the financial condition of such affected individual and his or her family. So that's where they're going to say, well, he said, I think it's 5% or something ridiculous. Only 5% of your income will become your student loan payment versus what it was before. Absolutely absurd. D, the calculation under Section 484B B2 of the Act 20 USC 1091 BB2 of the amount of student loan is required to return in the case of an affected individual may be modified so that no overpayment will be required to be returned or repaid if the institution has documented 1, the student's status as an affected individual in the student's file, or 2, the amount of overpayment discharged, and E, This is the scary part. Listen to this. Institutions of higher education, eligible lenders, guarantee agencies, and other entities participating in the Student Loan Assistance Program under Title IV of the Act that are located in areas that are declared a disaster area by any federal, state, or local official in connection with a national emergency, or whose operations are significantly affected by a disaster, may be granted temporary relief from requirements that are rendered infeasible or unreasonable by a national emergency, including due diligence requirements and reporting deadlines. So if they decide to use this, and they are, that Section E has not been addressed by the Biden administration. So whether they're going to put that in the rule change that these wonderful higher education, these schools, lenders, everybody, the federal government lending out these loans can actually be less restrictive, if you will, and not have to meet stuff. I mean, I read it. That'll be interesting. So we'll have to look on that. So anyway, it says notice of waivers and modification, notwithstanding Section 437 of the General Education Act 20 U.S.C. 1232 and Section 553 of Title V U.S. Code, the Secretary shall, by notice in the Federal Register, publish the waivers or modifications of statutory and regulatory provisions the Secretary deems necessary to achieve the purpose of this section. Hint, hint, rule change. Terms and conditions. This is interesting. 2. The notice under paragraph 1 shall include terms and conditions to be applied in lieu of such statutory and regulatory provisions. Okay. 3. Here's the part that's interesting. Case by case basis. The Secretary is not required to exercise the waiver or modification authority under this section on a case by case basis. So in other words, this is a blanket, okay, which we all knew was going to be the case anyway, but this is a blanket. So there is no case by case basis regarding this student loan handout. And it says they're supposed to report stuff to the Committee on Education in the House and the Senate, blah, blah, blah. It says tuition refunds or credits for members of the armed services. Boom. That's Section 3, right? Section 4, use of personal judgment. A financial aid administrator shall be considered to be making a necessary adjustments in accordance with Section 47AA of the Act if the administrator makes adjustments with respect to calculation of expected students' or parents' contributions or both of an affected individual and adequate documents the need for the adjustment. What that's talking about that they're going to use is the part that adjusts your payment starting January 2023. Here's the definitions, and that's important, okay? Active duty, obviously, is active duty. People in the military, it says affected individual. Remember I said that earlier. Affected individual was everywhere. It means A, is serving on active duty during a war or other operation or national emergency. B, performing qualifying National Guard duty during war or other military operation or natural emergency. C, this is where they blanket it, resides or is employed in an area that is declared a disaster area by any federal, state, or local official in connection with a national emergency. Or D, suffer direct economic hardship as a direct result of a war or other military operation or national emergency as determined by the Secretary. So that's how they're blanketing it, C through D, to apply to people outside of the military. Those are going to be what they justify, guaranteed. Then it goes into some other definitions that we're not going to bother to go into. And it says termination of this authority. It says the provisions of this act shall cease to be effective as of the close September 30th, 2005, which apparently this was renewed and had not sunset as of this day. So that's what they're using for the authority in order to blanket this for the entire country, is the HEROES Act of 2003. I'll say it again. Higher Education Relief Opportunities for Students Act of 2003. So he is creatively, by all means, creatively doing this. Okay? Like I said, the authority that he's using is ridiculous in a sense that I could see a million lawsuits going against it by referencing the HEROES Act. I'm waiting for the Department of Education to publish their notice for a rule change to see if they actually do reference the HEROES Act, which is exactly what I was told that they are going to do. Otherwise, there really is no authority for this, because when you do a proposed rule change through any department for anything, you have to reference law. There is no law to reference other than the HEROES Act of 2003. So that's how they're justifying it for the entire country, is because you reside in an area that is declared a national emergency, which is the whole United States, and you had or had economic hardship in those areas because of the national emergency. Since he extended the national emergency indefinitely in February of 2022, okay, lots of things can be done by the Biden administration using emergency authorities, if you will. So that's the authority Biden is using for student loan handouts. This is Are You Ready For It? Take care, guys. Have a great day.